Welcome everybody to AcadHelp Bio Webinar series. This series is on genetics. This is the first part where we'll be discussing the fundamentals of genetics. When we talk of genetics, the first word which comes to our mind, or the first person which comes to our mind, is Mendel. So we'll start this program by knowing in brief the life of Gregor Johann Mendel, the father of modern genetics. With this, I welcome all of our guests, Mrs. Radha Subramaniam from Mumbai, Mr. Rajiv Ranjan Singh from Kumbhigram, Kachar district of Assam, and Mrs. Vandana from Kendriya Vidyalaya, Uppal number 1, Hyderabad. Welcome all of you to this show.
Yeah,
now, Mr. Rajiv, first let's have a question with you. That is, would you like to describe in brief the life history of Gregor Johann Mendel?
Yeah, definitely. When we talk about Mendel, I think he's always talked about one individual whose brain produced a solid foundation that has been the platform for working of so many people in years to come.
Right.
When we talk about Mendel, I'll just talk about his life sketch a bit. He was born in a small poor peasant family in 1822, 22nd July 1822. And the family had a small piece of land on which they worked. He grew as a curious child and he had a lot of questions since childhood, asking his parent about the various morphological variations. Why the flower is like this, why the color is this, why it is tall and dwarf. His father thought, okay, let me give him some convention of education. He requested church and further he was given some primary education. Further, he did 4 years of graduation, but after that, it was difficult for him to meet his education. At the age of 21, in around 1843, he joined church. And that was, the place where Mendel became Gregor John Mendel. He was
Right.
John Mendel by that time. And the church was of Gregorian convention, so he started calling himself Gregor John Mendel.
Okay, he was originally John Mendel. Later on, he became Gregor Johann Mendel.
True. Based on his inclination with the gardening, he used to look after the garden of that church. And the authorities thought, okay, fine, he is a person who is giving a lot to the church. Let him be in charge of the same. He worked with dedication, and in around 1847, he was appointed as the priest of the church.
Right.
And that was the year of transformation.
Right.
So, and one thing we can always think and keep in mind that church and science was delineating at that time. Church and university was delineating at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, based on his interest and curiosity, he was sponsored a course of post-graduation from Vienna University. From 1851 to 1853, he did it from Vienna University in natural science and mathematics. So, mathematics is one combination that we find in Mendelian genetics.
Uncommon combination with natural science. At that time, this was biology, and this was called natural science.
Yes.
And having mathematics combination with this is really something quite different.
Actually, integrated approaches like chemistry with biology and physics with biology and computer science with biology, are 20th century subjects. So by integrating mathematics with natural sciences, Mendel was much ahead of his times. He was much visionary. So natural science, as it was looked after, at the perspective of people of that time, was only about plants and animals. So integrating numbers to natural science was something beyond their head. Probably that is why it was much neglected. But he was a visionary 150 years around ahead of his times. That is the thing.
Right. So
True.
Mr. Rajiv,
And that's what we can call his both the parts. Left and right brain were functioning beautifully. Aesthetics and calculation coming together.
Yes.
Right. Then when he became the member of Zoological and Botanical Society of Vienna, and that was when, when we read Mendel, we find he worked with pea. But from where that love for pea originated?
This is
one area.
A very important question. So why did he get for pea? Okay, we'll come to that question later on. Now, please, about him, let us first know.
Yes, so he started as a research associate in the same university where he worked on the weevil we will used to damage pea plant and the crop was marred by that. So he
Right.
was to investigate on that. And that was the area and time when he observed the morphological difference and various characters, contrasting characters in pea. And then he thought, my childhood questions that I had unanswered, now I have got a brilliant chance of
That's good.
investigating those questions and answering it.
Okay, Rajiv,
So,
I think we also will be answering to many students their questions through this.
yeah,
through this-
definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
sure. Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Okay. So,
So,
any more?
then-
Yes, please.
Yes. I'll come to the whole life sketch. I'll just give
Okay,
a gist and then we can build on that.
Okay.
So then he started his famous experimental background, 1856 to 1863. And in that period of time, he went to different part of Europe and collected around 34 different varieties of pea. 34 different varieties.
This is a great
And see, his assumptions were too great.
right.
That we'll talk in the remaining part by our other lectures as well.
Mhm.
He started concentrating them and got 22 pure yielding varieties. And in span of 3 years, he has observed around 10,000 pea plants. Is it not phenomenal? And
No.
now, when he came back to his ways, then he thought, okay, let me share my experiences with people around. So he called on to the people of Brunn and said, okay, let me present my work. But when he presented his work, I am really surprised to find out his work was neither appreciated nor understood. The clappings were there, but they were half-hearted clappings. That kept him hard. And then he documented his work in German. Experiment on plant hybridization. Till that genetics term was not there. So he quoted like experiment in plant hybridization, which got a mention in the volume 4 of that Natural History Society
Oh, Brun.
work. Yes. So that was there. And then after, what has happened? It is a dark period, which we'll discuss again. And well, he left his research work, maybe discouraged, deserted. And by 1884,
1884.
he took his
yeah.
last breath at the age of 62. Yeah, January 6th, 1884. So the miraculous monk, I call him. Always I call him miraculous monk. He met a unworthy end.
Can you just imagine that Mendel had worked so early on genetics? Now we call it as genetics. And after his death, 16 years later, again the work was published. And he was recognized 16 years after his death. This is something really, we have to think over it. What a intelligent person and what a contribution to this world he has given. Or his contribution we can't forget. We have advanced in genetics, application of genetics in different sciences in our lives, but the basics lies with Mendelism. Thank you, Rajiv, for this explanation about his life, because our tribute starts with his knowing his life. So when we start genetics, it is our foremost duty that we know about Mendel and then we proceed. Thank you very much. Now my question to, I'll come to Radha Madam. His question to
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
Now, let's continue with the discussion. I'd like to ask Radha Madam, Mrs. Radha Subramaniam, this is a question for you.
Yes,
And
sir.
the question is, why did Mendel choose pea plant? Or what are the advantages he was having with the pea plant?
Actually, when Mendel started his studies, can you hear me?
Yes, you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, when he started his studies, he actually was looking for organisms which were model systems, and he thought he should do some work for those organisms which will multiply very fast. And so he started using mice in the church, and the bishops were very angry that he was using mice. So
Nice.
they said, no, you don't breed mice over here. So then he changed over to honeybees, and he wasn't getting good results. So then he changed finally to the garden peas, because he happened to be from the peasant family, and he probably had some idea about the peas cultivation.
So let's discuss this point. That is the advantage of having pea plant, whatever Madam has said. Thereafter, Vandana, Madam, can you just explain this part?
Actually, as Madam says, being part of the peasant family, so his interest in pea, because he knows how to cultivate. And because the pea, he finds that it is a self-pollinating one, a bisexual one. It is easy to breed. If it is left itself, it is self-pollinating. And he could easily select plants for his cross-pollination. He could cut off the anthers and he could do these things. So that was one thing. And his approach towards the experimentation, like because whatever plants he has brought are showing very distinct morphological characters, and he focused only on the phenotypes, what we call as phenotypes, externally visible characters, color dikh raha hai ya kuch aisa. So that is one thing which would have been fascinating. So he could do it. And here I should say, whatever characters he has selected for his experiments, 7 contrasting traits which we say, superb selection, because all of them were showing complete segregation and independent assortment, whereas the people who worked with others, like Andalusian fowls or anything, they were getting confused because they could encounter what is called linkage and so many other non-Mendelian things. So there, I think he didn't get the reputation and honor in his life which he was supposed to, but somewhere luck favored in this aspect, at least, that whatever characters he selected segregated very well, and he got the same ratios again and again. So he could put forward his ratios, simplify karke.
That's right. Now, certain advantages he was having. That is, it's an annual plant.
Annual plant, yes.
Morphologically, all the characters which were studying. Ultimately, he had chosen 7 characters, and all of them are very distinct and easily visible. Culturing was easy, and also the generation with the seed preservation, that was also easier.
And he selected morphologically distinct ones. Suppose he would, if he didn't really bother to select the protein content of the pea seed or anything, then quantitative traits were difficult at that level. He didn't select anything. So he selected color, then height of the stem, then shape and all. Yes, all qualitative.
Now, will you please continue with the actual 7 characters which he had chosen, and also make difference between the characters and the traits?
Yes, 1 minute, sir.
Are you going to show any slide?
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to, sir.
Okay. So, after Mendel experimented on pea, he had actually started with several characters, and ultimately he published his work on the basis of the observation on the 7 characters.
Yeah.
Now, so please continue with this part.
7 pairs of contrasting traits, sir. Like, see, he has selected seed shape, pod shape, seed color, pod color. See, seed shape round and wrinkled. Then pod shape inflated, constricted. Then seed color green, yellow. Pod color green, yellow. So these things are mentioned in the text. Flower color violet and white. Then flower position axial terminal. Stem length tall and dwarf. So in this case also, see tall and dwarf when we discuss some. In case of pea plant, this is controlled by a single gene, but that is not the case in others, isn't it? It is more, it may be polygenic and many others, but he selects it without knowing the chemical basis or the psychological basis of what is happening inside the nucleus. He could select it very well. Superb guesswork that these things they are selected, and they are showing complete segregation and assortment. So
that means he had selected 7 such characters.
Yes.
And each character having 2 distinct traits.
Yes.
For example, if you talk of the height of the plant, then
tall and dwarf.
Distinct. One was a tall trait, and another was a dwarf trait.
Right.
Okay. It was contrasting
characters, and those which are heritable.
Traits of a character.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I'll again come back to Rajiv. Mr. Rajiv.
Yes, please.
Vandana, you can switch off the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Now come back to Mr. Rajiv. You have explained the life of Mendel. Now, you have explained so beautifully, and many of the information we are not knowing also. Many people would not have been knowing. Now the question is, Mendel had published his work, and 16 years later, means after his death, he was recognized. Why he was not recognized during his time? I'd like to know from you.
Yes. See, about the work of Mendel, a famous quotation goes like this: Mendel threw gems in front of the swine. That is one quotation that is heard. And Mendel's work fall on the deaf ears. Why it is called as deaf ears? I can just find out or point out, accumulate some reasons for that. First, he could not communicate to many areas because science is a growing branch. And
it was really tough. It's not like today that we are sitting at 4 different corners of a country. Just imagine.
Yeah, that's what.
4 different corners of a country and we are talking together, discussing. And that too.
It was not the case.
Yes.
In a paradigm, you need to have a consensus. Then only paradigm accepts the particular convention. Though his work was fabulous. Then he used mathematics in botany, which was totally out of the box.
Right.
What is there? What is to be there? And statistics as in particular. So that was again one area people did not understand, and neither they expected anyone to use this branch of mathematics in botany.
People say,
in the meantime,
what is the importance of maths in biology, natural science? What is this interpretation? This was never considered.
True.
Because he was the first person to do so. Right.
That's what, Vanda ma'am rightly said, 150 years ahead of others.
Really?
So his thinking was like that.
Really?
Then it was found in some plants, intermediate character arose, the linkage phenomenon or incomplete dominance and whatsoever. So that also raised certain fingers. Mendel has got some flaw there itself. But one factor that we need to understand, it was overshadowing by another contemporary, Darwin.
Darwin, yes.
Charles Darwin.
People were
Darwin.
The Origin of Species, which was published in 1859. So that was really fascinating. It's a voyage on, and his description, people were more interested in that. And as I said, natural sciences means plants and animals. So numbers in natural science was literally out of the head. So people did not understand.
Yes, we have got two schools, population genetics of Darwin and analytical genetics of Mendel. So now what has happened? Darwin was odd. Both read each other. Mendel had a copy of Darwin's work, and Darwin also had similar idea about Mendel's work. Then he thought, okay, now what if Mendel is coming to the limelight? He will hog the limelight and my work will be shadowed. So I don't know whether it's deliberately or something else. He presented some challenge to Mendel. He said, okay, fine. Now you repeat this work on hawkweeds, French bean, and bees. So Mendel started doing that. Actually, he again conducted his experiment on hawkweed. 26 species he purified, he got, but he was unknown that there is a phenomenon of apomixis that takes place in hawkweed. So his idea was truly applicable for sexually reproducing organisms. But hawkweed gave a very anomalous result. And that disheartened. So some point of time, one might think whether it was deliberately planted by Darwin. He knew whether that result are going to be same or not. It's a matter of thinking and rethinking. But that was one point when Darwin's work was, totally eclipsed, and he remained in shadow. Darwin thought hard, Mendel thought hard, and then he abandoned with his word. He was disheartened. I cannot prove myself. And that's how he started getting his heart into the other work of the church. And in 1882, he took last breath. So that's why.
From 1882 to 1900, no publication, no work on genetics, because Mendel was not there. But people understood him at least 16 years back, means later.
And yes, I'll come back. I'll come back to those areas also. Now what has happened? Because science is ever changing, ever constant. Three eminent scientists, Hugo de Vries, Carl Correns, and Eric von Schwemark. Right? These three scientists working independently. And they were also having same question as Mendel had. And while trying to answer these questions, they also had in mind, okay, let us find out if anyone in the world, because there was no much communication, has found the answer. They came across the work of Mendel. And then they found, okay, this gentleman has solved the problem years back, right? And then they have rediscovered the Mendelian work. But by that time, it was too late.
Discovery of Mendelism. That's what it is called as the discovery of Mendelism in 1900.
Yeah, Hugo de Vries' work on Oniothera, Correns' work on maize and Xenia and P and Stremark work on other prowling plants. Now his work was actually brought to the stage by Bedson.
Yeah.
William Bedson in 1901. Yeah. He repeated his experiment and got them published in his book. And he also translated the German paper into English and let the world know this is what Mendel was capable. And in 1905, the branch that was born with Mendel's work, got a name, genetics. And a book was published by Bedson, I believe, Mendel's Principle of Heredity, I guess. And that work contained all work of Mendel, right? And he was called as father of modern genetics. And his statistical work was further taken up by Raymond Fisher in 1936. He analyzed the book, he analyzed his work and proved Mendel was a genius. And that's how his work was rediscovered.
Thank you, Rajiv, with your wonderful explanation. Now, when we are studying genetics, we'll be coming across some important terminologies, which are the basics. Because these terminologies are important to understand our later discussions also. And since these are some genetic terms, first we need to clarify these terms for our audience, for our students. So now we'll come across some terminologies which I think we'll discuss before we enter into actual Mendel's work. Certain terms like, because these terms are used, dominance and recessive. Now just now, Vandana Madam was showing the 7 characters which Mendel had used for the experiments, and each character having 2 traits. So when we have 2 traits in simultaneously, one more question comes, then these 2 traits, what is the relation between them? The relation is dominance and recessiveness. What is this dominance and recessiveness? Mrs. Vandana, please.
Actually, a character has been called dominant if it is expressing in the F1. So Mendel, when he did the experiments, he continuously inbred these stocks and tried to get what we call as pure lines today. So that now, after a few generations, he selected one such a plant as a male and another plant as a female, and he tried to crossbreed them and got the F1. So when he got the F1, okay, whatever trait is being expressed in the F1, he called it as dominant. The other remains hidden. So the one character which is expressing in the F1 is called dominant, and the other which is not expressing in F1, that is being hidden, is called recessive. So this is hidden, so it is coming up again in the F2 generation. So that's the difference between dominant and recessive. And the convention is that we try to put the alphabets to these, and we try to denote uppercase or capital letter for the dominant and the lowercase or the small letter for the recessive.
Right, thank you. That means you want to say that whenever we start with the Mendelian crosses, it should start with a pure lines.
Pure lines.
There should be pure lines. And that is the most important part of Mendelian genetics, which many people didn't understand at the time. That it is that he worked with pure plants. The tall plant which he had taken was pure.
Actually, as I know, sir, scientists before Mendel also tried.
Yes,
But
yes.
the point is, they have not gone for one character at a time, 2 characters at a time. Probably they have taken many characters at a time. And if we look into an organism as a whole, then if these characters, all of them don't show simple dominance and recessive. Say, if you take our own example, blood group is multiple allelism, something is polygenic, something is pleiotropy, like this. So in that case, if they have taken so many characters at a time, then because these characters have different inheritance patterns, they would never land up with a continuous kind of a ratio or a consistent kind of ratio for them to give a result.
That's why Mendel was far ahead of his time.
At least 150 years ahead of his time. So out of the box, how will people follow a person 150 years ahead?
That's why, since he had studied maths, he had a good command over statistics.
But as I come to know, he was not good at mathematics. As a student of mathematics, he was not successful. Sometimes the last bencher, backbencher also succeeds, what I feel.
It is not because it is not question of whether how much he was intelligent in mathematics. It's a question of how much he could apply his knowledge
Application part.
into natural science. That is more important, as which he had done it. Anyway, so you mean to say that the trait which is expressed in the F1 generation will be considered as a dominant trait. And so the trait which is not expressed is a recessive trait. However, the recessive trait will be expressed in the F2 generation with a lower frequency. In Mendelism, we'll study as 3:1 ratio in the F1 in the F2 generation. Okay, thank you very much. Now, before this, again another question comes. That is pure lines, which I was just saying. Until unless you get a pure line, we can't start studying Mendelism. The most problem with many scientists was that they studied, they tried to explain, they tried to justify or to even challenge Mendel's work, which was, they started with those plants, those parents which were not yours. Am I right?
Yeah.
Rajiv, are you hearing me?
Yeah, it's getting broken a bit. Yeah, please come again.
Okay. And now I would like to know from you some more questions. That is, tell me about the homozygous and heterozygous conditions. Homozygous and heterozygous conditions?
Yeah, actually, Mendel, when we talk about Mendel, he used the word factors,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
At that time,
Which we
genes
later come to know as
cool.
yes. So, when the both alleles or both factors are identical, right? If by convention you designate them some name, let's say capital T for tallness. If on both the locus it is capital T and capital T, or either small t or small t, then they are called to be homozygous.
Right.
On the contrary, if both factors are dissimilar, not dissimilar in terms of trait, but dissimilar in terms of their expressions. So capital T and small t, when it comes, then it's called as heterozygous.
Now, just say, this is so fantastic that Mendel considered that the characters, okay, while assigning the factors, I don't know how he understood that these are diploid organisms. Okay, that every character should have two locations, two locus. Okay, and there will be chromosomes, which later on we came to know, homologous chromosomes, having the same gene in the same locus. But Mendel, I don't know how he could realize. That is why he used two factors, not only known as the alleles.
His approach was very, very simple. He was trying to find out the general principle rather than investing too much in too little of time. Right? That was one part. And then he approached in a very systematic manner. So observation and calculation, both things gelled, and that gave him this result.
Now, this is a mathematical brain, sir. A generalization, okay, for something. And a simple approach, generalization, and deriving and concluding in mathematical numbers and all is a mathematical brain of it. He had two brains. So one is the biological one, and the other probably the mathematical one. Both of them were working superb.
And integration of these two is Mendelism.
Yeah, sure.
That's nicely said. We come across another very important terms. These are paired terms, phenotype and genotype. When we'll be discussing Mendelism, and thereafter also, we'll come across these terms, phenotypes and genotypes. Vandana Madam would like to just explain this. What is this phenotype and genotype?
Phenotype is rather what we see externally. Say, for example, as Rajiv sir said, capital T suppose we denote. That is tall. Capital T, small t, because small t is recessive allele and it is remaining hidden. So even if it is there, it is not expressing. So capital T, small t will be also tall. So if we consider the alleles, capital T is homozygous or pure tall, and capital T, small t is heterozygous tall. So the difference in the genetic constitution is, if you look into this aspect, it is the genotype. If we just simply look at how externally it is appearing, then that is a phenotype.
Okay, that's fine. That is whatever is visible.
Yeah,
that is visible.
Morphological trait, morphologically kaise dikh raha hai, that is the phenotype.
Visible character is the
genetic constitution and physical appearance.
Genetic constitution ko bhi dekha jaye to then we will be getting into genotype.
That means when we go into the genotype, means the genetic constitution of the phenotype.
Yeah.
That will be called as a genotype. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's nice. Knowing this also. One more term which will be coming across is very important, because Mendel's all experiments are based on this. That is reciprocal crosses, because Mendel's experiments shows that reciprocal crosses gives the same result. Which Morgan's, we study later on, Morgan's results were not like that. We'll come to that later on, not now. Let's start with Mendelism. With reciprocal crosses. What is this? Okay, now say suppose I'm just explaining it. Reciprocal crosses means a plant. I take two plants, A and B. A cross to B or B cross to A. The product of the F1 will be the same.
Yeah.
Now the question is, when we talk of crossing, what is this crossing? Because those who are first-time learners, for them it is important. We have to know cross-pollination, self-pollination and cross-pollination. Now, crossing means cross-pollination. What is this? What actually Mendel did, we have to know it first. That is, transferred pollen from flower of A plant to the flower of B plant. So from A to B, pollen is transferred. This is one cross. And if that means plant A is the male, plant B is the female. So now the seed will be born on the female plant. He will consider the seed from the female plant. Similarly, if the pollen is transferred from transfer B to A, and now the A plant is the female plant, and the seed will be collected from the A plant. He found that when such experiments were conducted for various, for the different 7 characters, he found that when A transferred to B or B transferred to A, the F1 results were always the same. This is reciprocal cross. Rajiv, are you now audible?
Yeah, audible.
Okay, now I think in between you are disconnected, so I continue with the discussion. Okay, now Rajiv, would you know, tell us about the pure lines, because the pure lines are the most important part of the discussion.
Yeah, actually Mendel's approach had 3 things in mind. Actually, he started with pure lines. And as we know, as when we go with self-fertilization, right? Self-fertilization leads to create appearance of these factors in homozygous condition. And when they are homozygous, so repeatedly if you go and do the self-fertilization, you get the same parental character, and that we call as pure line. So his approach has this first
condition.
Yes, homozygous condition.
Yes.
So basically his experiment had a simple design. Preparation of pure lines, then cross-fertilization among them, getting a hybrid, and then self-fertilizing them.
Right.
This was one basic design that he followed, which gave him all the results.
Thank you, Rajiv. You have correctly said. Just to think of this, how can people think such in that period? That if I develop a pure line, then if a pure line is crossed with some other plant, then I can easily track the changes, right? The hybrids can easily be tracked, that what new character is adding to it. This was the main objective, and which he had thought so early, right? So I think we have been discussing, and the terms which we have used, students will be understanding this. Now these terms, factors now known as genes. Okay, alleles. One more important term which comes is the alleles. Because since now we are not going to use factors, Mendelian factors, now we have come into different terminologies. Now will you explain this alleles?
Sir,
Yeah, the alternate. Yes.
sir is explaining.
Okay, both of you are now ready to speak. Okay,
No,
then.
actually, I can, but sir has started.
Okay, Bandana, please say.
Sir, actually, gene, suppose we take the height of the pea plant. The gene which is responsible for the height of the pea plant has 2 alleles, tall and dwarf, right? So the difference is gene exists in 2 or more forms, okay, which are called alleles.
Right. So these are the different forms of the gene. Rajiv, would you like to add anything here?
Yes, definitely. I give one example to my student because they are using, WhatsApp and all quite a lot. So I give them smileys. You take smileys. There are alternate forms of expression.
Yeah.
So
One is happy mood.
Yes.
Same diagram, just the face upside down.
Upside down, yes.
Expression. One is smiling, another is sad. Right.
Yeah.
That's a interesting example.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did actually Mendel do? What did Mendel do actually? Can you tell me what actually Mendel did? Yes.
Mendel actually propounded certain generalizations, how the traits are transmitted from one generation to another in the simplest possible word. And he was looking at some rules and that too in a fashion where how the gene interact. So this interaction was highlighted through experiment. And first of all, he devised a monohybrid cross. Right, we are all aware of the crosses now. So he took one characteristic, and based on that characteristics, he gave certain laws, certain explanation. So I think I'll be just sharing one screen.
We'll come to, just a minute, Rajiv, just a minute. I think we'll come to monohybrid cross later on. Just a general concept
Okay.
of what Mendel did. What Mendel did.
Fine.
Like, Mendel chose the plant experiments in plants. He collected. He first understood what are the 7 characters I'm going to study. He made individual observations.
Yeah.
All the 7 characters he made, or he studied the monohybrid cross. He got the results, means F1 and F2 results, even up to F3 results, and he analyzed them. That was one by one, means one character at a time he studied. For this crossing, that is crossing A to B and B to A, that is reciprocal crosses, selfing, and he got the results, F1 results. He got the F2 results, that is, he got the phenotypes and the genotypes. He found how the phenotypes and genotypes also differed. Like this, he continued with 2 characters at this time. So first he was studying with 1 character at a time, then he started studying with inheritance of
2 characters.
2 characters at a time.
Right.
When he started 2 characters at a time, he found new observations. And during all these experiments, he came up with certain laws. He developed some laws, some principles, dominance and recessiveness. Then came law of segregation, the most important part. Then comes the law of independent assortment. We'll come to all this one by one. So this is how Mendel actually worked. One important thing was that the seed, when we talk of F1 or F2 or any generation, it is the seed. A plant crossed, 2 plants are crossed. Immediately you don't get the result. You get the product of the cross, that is the seed. This seed is sown in the next season, and then the characters are studied. Right? So Mendel had to wait for the next season to find out what is the result of the present cross. Today I have crossed something, A plant with B plant. This flower now bears fruit and seeds. Seeds are the product of the cross. They are preserved till the next season. When the seeds will be again sown, they will grow and at least to maturity, and then the observation will be done to find out what I had done in my previous season. Long time he had to spend on this. This is what actually Mendel had done. Right?
Being very methodical and patient.
Methodical and patient and very systematic.
Very
So ये
important
seeds preserve करते वक्त he has to tag them, he has to separate them कि ये है, ये है. So all these precautions he had to take. So very methodical and systematic with a lot of patience.
I know because fortunately I was doing my PhD in Agriculture University in genetics and plant breeding also.
Okay.
So I know what the plant breeders were doing and how much painful it is. Not a very easy task.
Yeah.
Before sunrise, they used to go for emasculation, bagging, and also pollinating. I saw them. Since my work was in the lab based, I was in a cell culture lab. Okay. So that was different work. Anyway, so now I'll come to Mandana madam. Would you please explain this, what Mendel had done, that is the monohybrid cross?
Yes, regarding his work. Hello.
No, regarding this monohybrid cross.
Sure. Let me. So when we talk about Mendelian monohybrid cross or dihybrid, his design remains the same, right? First of all, he'll prepare the pure line, then he'll go for cross fertilization, and then he'll go for self fertilization. So what he did actually, he just took a tall plant And need to remember that it's homozygous or pure line for tallness and dwarf line.
Mendelism,
And when you cross them,
it is pure lines. In Mendelism, whenever you talk about
true.
you start with pure lines.
We talk about pure lines, true. So, astonishingly, he found that F1 hybrid were all tall.
Right.
So, he had two questions in mind. Why all have become tall and what has happened to the dwarf plant?
Right.
And this question was dealt by his another genius. Now, let me do some self-cross. He selfed the tall plant of F1 and then he found the result which was very astounding. He got 75% of them as tall and a reappearance of the dwarf character.
Right.
So that made him to think, okay, fine, it is not vanishing of character, rather it's interaction that is expressed in the form of physical character.
Right.
But if it would have happened, why the dwarf did not express in the first generation? That was another question. He answered, okay, now I understood that since there was a dominant gene, dominant trait, in presence of that, the dwarf will not express. Its expression is going to be masked. So now, whatever is dominant, that will express in all probabilities, whether homozygous or heterozygous. So that's where he got his idea, law of dominance. And on selfing, he found now what is happening. Since he had his presumptions that in gametes, what happens, there are factors coming from both the parent. So while formation of gametes, these factors tend to segregate and each gamete contain only one type of factors and that is, they are pure. So that is called purity of gametes.
Purity of gametes.
Right.
Law of segregation is also called as law of purity of gametes.
No, that's what I'm coming to that.
Rajiv, just interrupt. I'll let you interrupt. Just can you imagine during that time he could find or he could realize that there is separation of alleles which actually occurs in the gamete formation. That is from diploid to haploid conditions. The cells, you find the cells moving from diploidy to haploidy. Means diploid cells, they produce haploid gametes, and this concept he was having at that time. That's why you find capital T now forms gametes, capital T one gamete and the capital T other gamete. So they are separated. Means now you find from diploid condition they are coming to haploid condition. So isn't this thinking much ahead of its time?
Yeah.
Definitely. Restoration of the plurality.
Much ahead of its times.
Right.
Phenomenal.
Please continue. Can you hear me, Rajiv?
Yeah, it's really getting broken. It's really getting broken. Hello.
Yes.
Am I audible? My voice is clear.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
to me it's clear, sir.
Continue.
Yeah. So this is how he got his explanation, and he repeated this with other traits as well. And he found all the similar results, though it was a ratio, right? 3:1. And on analyzing, he found, okay, what is happening now? This combination is coming. So homozygous tall is 25%, heterozygous tall is another 50%, and the recessive character, always homozygous, is 25%. So this is, he got now that genes are also interacting in such a fashion that they are giving some either common appearance or the discrete appearance, right? So that is what he has done with monohybrid cross. And later it was analyzed, what is the mechanism behind that? So it was assumed that these genes are responsible for forming some enzymes. If it is one factor, the dominant factor that produces enzyme which results in the tallness of a plant, if that is missing, the plant does not grow that much.
And
so that was later correlated.
And all this guess he did without knowing the cytogenetics part of it. Now we know that if tallness is expressing, means it is producing something, so the plant is becoming tall, and in the presence of this particular allele, the dwarf, the small t is not producing anything. That's why the plant is not growing tall, is something which we know now. But around that time, when Mendel worked, to imagine or guess all this was really phenomenal. without knowing what is
That's,
happening inside the nucleus.
yes, he is called as the father of modern genetics.
Yeah.
That's right. You really, this is something which really our students want to should know, that at what period what work was done.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Sure.
now I have a very important question. Okay, that is after conducting this monohybrid cross on all the 7 traits as characters and came to the same results, that in the F1, one of the character is, trait is dominant over the other trait.
Yeah.
And in the F2, when the F1s are selfed, in the F2, the trait which was hidden in the F1, they express, but
Much.
with a much lower frequency.
Yeah.
That means the trait is not lost. Somewhere it was hidden. It was obscured for some certain period of time. So now through this, he established many conceptions, many concepts.
From the student's perspective, I think one more point I missed, and I should bring it to the discussion, that he gave 2 ratios. He gave 2 ratios in
Phenotypic
F2.
and genotypic ratios.
Yes, phenotypic and
3:1
genotypic ratios.
and 1:2:1
Yes.
genotypic.
Yes, true,
That
true.
means the phenotype 3:1 in the F2 actually has another ratio inside it. The
1:2:1.
3 tall is not of the same type. Though phenotypically they are same, genotypically they are 2 different types of tall plant. One is pure tall and 2 others are impure tall, that is a heterozygous tall.
Heterozygous tall.
Now, many times I find the students, they are confused with certain. I'll give you a very common example of how students are they mislead. That is, once I asked a student, means in the class, suppose after this class, if I ask a student, a red flower is crossed with a white flower,
Okay.
what do you expect in the F1? A very common question. What will the student answer? I'm not asking you. I'm asking what will the student answer by default? Yes.
By default, if he should say that red, the color will be red.
What do you think the students will answer?
The student might answer red because red, pata nahi. It's difficult to guess.
No, they will answer.
They will answer, but red. They may say red. Red
It's
is
not
a,
important
No,
whether
they can answer white as well. They can answer white as well.
it is
Doesn't
not.
matter.
It is not important.
You didn't say
whether answering correct or wrong.
yeah.
The important
They
is
can't-
the teacher
they-
needs to correct them.
Yeah.
That is, I have seen many students answering as red. Many students
The
answering
point
as
is like they learn from the basics
Okay.
that white is not a color in itself. It is again 7 colors. So kahin na kahin ye bhi aa jayega. So red is a pure color. So he will say red. Chances are more for that.
That is what we as a teacher, we need to make it very clear to the student. They think in mind that in Mendelism we have seen that the purple is dominant over white.
Mm.
So red will be dominant over white by default, right?
That's-
It's not so. I didn't say it is a pea plant or XYZ plant.
Yeah.
I said it's a red flower crossed with a white flower of the same species.
It's quite possible
Now,
that in a
this is the
particular
question.
plant white is
The question
dominant.
is, the right answer should be, the student should be able to answer, it may be red or white.
Right.
Yes, true.
Unknown. Since we
they
don't know which one is the dominant trait.
But they will pre-assume that it is red.
That is the question. This is important thing which they have to understand and answer. That is,
Genetics में ऐसा
that is
कुछ rule
after-
नहीं है कि red should
after
be
the
dominant
F1
over white always.
after seeing the expression in the F1, I will decide which one is dominant, red or white.
Yeah. Genetics में ऐसा कोई rule नहीं बना सकते हैं कि red should be always dominant over white.
We need to energize and
Yeah.
what do you call, make clarity of understanding with
Yeah.
our students.
I think in one of the classes, I think in class 10, there is a question of dog's coat and all. So student come with variable answer.
Right. So, you see, in the classroom, when we are dealing with genetics, we must give some questions like this, some thought-provoking questions.
Yeah.
Really, they have to work upon and then they answer. Okay, or they have to think over it. They need not work upon it, but at least should think, and that to critically think, so that they answer. This is a very simple question which I asked. but it needs some critical analysis also, thinking
Yeah.
also, what can be the answer. Anyway, we are coming to the end of this discussion today, but before we leave, I think I have to discuss one more point. That is a concept of test cross and back cross.
Okay, sir.
Vandana madam, would you like to discuss this test cross and back cross? And I'll come to you, Rajiv, again for some other points.
So test cross and back cross, students also get confused. But if the F1 hybrid is crossed to its recessive parent exclusively, its recessive parent, then it becomes a test cross. And back cross means crossing the F1 to its any of the parent. We are not very specific there. So test cross should be a kind of a back cross, but we will insist on test cross because it will give a 1:1 ratio. So, I mean, say for example, the F1 heterozygous tall is crossed to its recessive parent dwarf, then the progeny will be 50% tall and 50% dwarf. So it gives this kind of a segregation is observed. Whereas if it is crossed to the dominant parent, say for example, capital T, small t heterozygous tall is crossed to its dominant parent, then obviously all are dominant phenotypically. Though genotypically, again, there is a segregation. So this fundamental difference will be there. The
Right.
cross of F1 to its recessive parent.
Right. Okay, now Rajiv, would you like to add something here?
Yeah, I'll just add a minute thing. When a student might get confused, the parent might have lost its life self. When you cross, the product comes,
Yeah.
so parent will not be present.
Actually,
So we can better add that
Rajiv, I tell you one thing.
cross with parental homozygous recessive genotype.
Yeah.
Actually, the problem
Parental.
in most of the books, the same language is written. That in case of test cross or back cross, that is crossing the F1 with its parent, recessive parent. Where do you get the parent? Say
Yeah, that's what. Parent may not be present.
when you talk of the plants which are annuals, especially if
Yeah,
the
in case
annual,
of P, though, yes.
then how will you get the parents? Because they are already died, and the product is in the next season.
Parental genotype.
You don't get the parent. So the language in the books also must be, but I find in most of the books it has been corrected. The language should be changed to the F1 when crossed to the plant having the same recessive genotype.
Character of the.
That is the parental genotype, because you can't have the parent plant. So a plant having the same
Parental genotype.
okay of the parent. So if I am crossing a tall plant, F1 tall plant with another plant is a dwarf plant, and dwarfs are by default they are homozygous. Okay.
Homozygous.
The recessive plants, they are by default
Homozygous have to be.
So now when I cross this heterozygous tall plant with a recessive plant, it is a test cross. And just like Madam has said, in case of back cross, it can be either of the
Parental genotypes.
parental genotypic plants, not parents. Plants having the same genotype of the parents. So since it is back, it is a back generation. Now, specific term used is test cross. It has a very important significance. Why it is called as a test cross? Rajiv, please.
Yeah, because you're looking for dominant characters, and basically when you talk about the agriculturist, or maybe they would definitely like to have the product which are better and dominant. So segregation of dominant trait, that is one more aspect for this test cross. So they're going to test whether the parent is homozygous for a trait or they are heterozygous for a trait.
Right.
Pure lines.
Now, yes, they are very common question which I used to ask my students. Now, suppose they are given this plant. No, this is not a plant, this is a pen, however. Okay. I give you this plant and I'm discussing the height of the plant, right? By default, you see this is a tall plant. Can you tell me the genotype?
Yeah, in case of a test cross, suppose I want to know the genotype of this particular tall plant.
That is what is a test cross.
Crossing it to the recessive genotype parent or the organism with a recessive trait, as you say, will give me the exact result. If it is a 1:1 segregation I get, then the organism is heterozygous for the trait, tall trait. If I get all tall, as I say, there is no segregation,
Right.
then it is this. So I'm testing, in fact, and finding out the genotype of the organism. So it is a test
So
cross.
whenever you want to know the genotype of an unknown plant,
Unknown plant,
unknown
yes.
character, I
Yeah.
know the phenotype of this plant, which is tall, but I don't know the genotype. And that,
Yes.
the only way to know the genotype is to conduct a test.
Continue with the test cross.
So like this, we can find out what is the genotype. So I think we have discussed sufficiently for today, and this first session on genetics, we have studied Mendel's life, the characters he had chosen, why he chose pea plant. Ultimately, we did not say that pea is scientific name of pea is
Physalis
Physalis
sativa.
sativa. So this
Sativa.
was the plant which he had used. So
Yeah.
at the end of this session, we like that our students and the viewers and learners, they are now clear with certain doubts. And I hope in future we'll be coming up and clarifying their doubts, because I'm getting a lot of questions from them. And that's why instead of just giving a lecture on the different topics, I'm calling the experts and I'm giving the questions to them for better explanation. And I hope we in future also will be conducting the same type of programs, and you will also be with me in such programs, and we try to solve the problems of the students, because we are dedicated teachers. Thank you very much for being with me. Hope to see you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was lightning to have a discussion.
Yeah, it was wonderful, sir.